meet my bride. Let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. Just where we will go, nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the speed meter steel, it's my newfangled automobile.
Well, hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill, and just in case you haven't guessed yet, I'm not going to talk about Batman and Robin, though I do think the various Batmobiles are cool. Anywho, in the late 19th century, the automobile was rapidly developing. Benz, Daimler, Panhard and Levasseur, Didion Bouton, Peugeot. The list of people and companies making both internal and external combustion engines are numerous. Yet at the same time, there were two men who would not only put electric cars on the map, but do it in a way that made world history. Two such electric motorheads are indeed the true dynamic duo, and they are Charles Gennatze and Camille Gennatze. We'll start with Charles. French guy, born in 1840, he was smart, a good engineer, and a good businessman, and had a knack for putting the right people in the right place, a natural-born kingmaker. He established a coach-building business in the 1860s and made good money. Yet he began to consider ways to make a horse-drawn coach even better. Coaches were big and required several horses to pull. Steering a large horse-drawn coach was not always the easiest thing, so he began to dabble in steering methods and invented the parallelogram steering linkage. This was among the first steering systems that could actually keep the front wheels in line well enough to make the coach steerable at higher speeds. With patent in hand, he began to produce coaches with this type of steering in 1878. But his own invention got him to start thinking. Since his coaches are capable of being controlled at speeds faster than a team of horses can safely pull it, how about putting an engine into it? He looked at his options. A steam engine would work, but it would be big and sooty like what Amédée Belay was building. A gas engine was too bulky and weak to pull a coach at any speed at that time. But what about an electric motor? Electric motors got their start in the 19th century, early in the 19th century, with the likes of Michael Faraday and such. By the time you get to 1880, both AC and DC motors were, although by no means perfected, certainly capable of moving a coach for a lot less space and weight. But there was one problem: batteries. At the same time, 1880, lead-acid batteries were still pretty primitive, and although they worked, they were big, heavy, and didn't have the best endurance and took a long time to charge. This is where Kingpin Chucky goes into action. He calls in a favor from a buddy of his, an electrical engineer named Camille Gennatze. His buddy Camille puts his head to it and in 1881 reinvents the lead-acid battery. Now he's got smaller batteries that deliver more power for longer, and they are also a bit lighter. Woot! And so in 1881, Charles Gennatze builds an electric coach. And it worked and was easy to steer, but the real fun began a few years later. In 1886, an American guy named Frank Sprague figured out how to make a DC electric motor, which is the typical kind you would use from a battery source, to actually have both good power and be easy to control. Sounds like a match made in heaven. Meanwhile, in Brussels, a young daredevil by the name of Camille Gennatze was growing up. Born into money in 1868, he was both an intuitive engineer and a thrill seeker, a classic example of a late 19th century European aristocrat. He enjoyed the sports that the wealthy indulged in: yacht racing, horse racing, hunting, that kind of routine. But unlike many of his peers, such as Albert de Dion, Gennatze had a decent layman's grasp of the principles driving the technology behind the then emerging automotive industry, and he wanted to go fast. Like Mr. Gennatze, he looked at the various options available at the time to power a motor vehicle. And by the early 1890s, he had decided that the best way to go really fast was with an electric car. His reasoning was simple. He just wanted the thrill of speed. So whatever could get him going the fastest, quickly, was the ticket. Having both money and brains, sorry Jay Leno, Gennatze set to design and build an electric car for one purpose: to be the fastest thing on wheels. Using the latest in both DC motor and battery technology, he set to building his ultimate electric speed car in 1898. Now let's not forget our friend Chucky. He too got wind of the new DC engine and decided to go into full production of electric cars in 1893. Though they did take a long time to recharge, days at least, they were quiet, clean, and very easy to operate, and immediately became popular with wealthy women. This fact did not set well with the dynamic duo. You have Charles on one hand, who was looking at things from a business sense. At that time, there were far more men able to buy cars than women. So the car needs to appeal to a wider demographic. At the same time, you have Camille coming from the nobility, wanting to make the electric car manly, simply to justify the sport of it. The first to strike was Kingpin Chucky. He had his people design a speed car, an electric car for the most daring person to drive, and then tapped the shoulder of his friend, Comte Gaston, oh my God, I'm going to butcher this, Chasseloup-les-Bas, to actually set up an official world land speed record. Once rules for such records and a governing body for such rules were established, Gaston drove Chucky's car to establish what is widely recognized as the first official world land speed record in December of 1898, set at 63.14 kilometers per hour. That's 39.24 miles per hour. But Camille, the red-bearded Belgian, showed up a few weeks later with his own design and beat it, going 66.64 kph. Now it was getting personal. Gaston shoved a few more batteries into his car and managed 70.30 kph. Camille did as well. Went to 80.32. Gaston did it again. Pushed up to 92.65 km, which we were talking 35 or 57-ish miles an hour. Camille decided to end this. He redesigned his car, now named Jamais Content, the Never Content, and put a body on it shaped like a frickin' torpedo. I mean, like Batmobile meets Jules Verne. He stuffed the biggest batteries into it he could, and on the 29th of April, 1899, he became the first human being to travel by car in excess of 100 kilometers per hour, setting the world land speed record at 105.86 kilometers per hour. That's 65.75 miles per hour. Ah! That scream is no joke. Keep in mind that in the 1890s, many scientists stated that if a human body was submitted to the atmospheric pressures at such speeds, it could explode. So as silly as it sounds, it took some brass sets to push that barrier back in that day. And Camille Gennatze will forever be the man to first break that barrier in a car. And the dynamic duo of Kingpin Chucky and Fast Cammy made electric cars a serious contender in the early automotive industry. Thanks for watching Vintage Car History, and we'll see you next week. Peace.